So, welcome, viewers and listeners, to episode 213 of the G2 on 5G, the latest inside scoop on everything 5G. We cover 6 topics in about 20 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, and joining me again this week is fellow analyst Anshul Sag. Let's get started with my first topic, and I want to talk about AT&T earnings. So, they posted recently their 4Q and year end. And the big thing to note here, Anshul, was the company rang in over 1 million fiber ads for 2024. That's a pretty astronomical figure by any measure. And I also had the opportunity to speak with Jennifer Robertson. She leads the mass markets consumer group for AT&T, both broadband and mobility. And we spoke about that as well as a number of other things such as the AT&T guarantee, AST Space Mobile, the relationship there driving low Earth orbit satellite connectivity, and the value of convergence. And what I'll state about convergence is that the company also reported that their convergence strategy, in other words, selling both mobility and fiber in broadband in general, WA together, is driving simplification. And they saw nearly a 2-point increase in the number of customers that take advantage of their converged services. That's up to 40% uh, by the end of 2024. I wrote a Forbes article about this, so I'm going to do a gratuitous plug. That was posted late yesterday. So if you want to go deeper into my conversation with Ms. Robertson, check that out. So what do you think about all of that with AT&T, my friend?
I think we've been talking about AT&T trying to improve the user experience and the customer experience.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not really sure that that has translated to improved numbers yet because it feels like it's been fairly recent.
It has, but I will mention, and I mentioned this in the article, from a business service perspective, AT&T has received really high marks from JD Power over the last 3 years. Now, when you look at the net promoter scores for AT&T's consumer business, they are fairly low relative to their competitors. But what Ms. Robertson shared with me is that those NPS scores are beginning to trend in the right direction. So there's positive outlook there. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I think really what this is AT&T's focus on the network, and building a good network that is capable and offers, you know, a good experience. That to me is actually what's paying dividends because they're
Yeah,
no longer distracted by all these side bets. And I think, all of the carriers just focusing on the network has really resulted in better revenues and better profits.
hmm,
Obviously, T-Mobile was the first because they were the most behind,
yeah,
but they've never taken their eye off the ball on the network. And Verizon had to really reconsider their approach, and AT&T made some modifications. But both Verizon and AT&T were very distracted by their media plays,
yeah.
and I think both of them divesting from those have resulted in better earnings and better customer satisfaction.
I couldn't agree more. The investment that AT&T in particular has made in its network infrastructure over the last 5 years is in the tens of billions of dollars, and there's an investment, you could state, from what they're doing with fiber. I mean, it's a long-term plan to build a franchise, and I've spent time with CEO John Stankey, and he's talked about that it's a tremendous investment up front. And he kind of joked with me and said that the next person that takes over for him should be sending John a gift basket, a fruit basket every Christmas, because of all of the investment and forward thinking that John has deployed there. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Investing in the network creates durability. Yeah,
I was going to add that I think AT&T's success in fiber is what I believe drove Verizon to go out and acquire Frontier
yeah.
after they had already sold off all their fiber assets to Frontier.
Exactly, and then T-Mobile, their attitude with fiber for years was that it was a commodity, and look what they're doing now with their, with joint ventures and in their investment as well. Yeah, because fiber is fundamental to backhaul, so yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, hey, let's talk more about AI. Verizon made an announcement recently with their AI Connect platform, and you want to talk about that. And I definitely have some opinion about that announcement too.
Yeah, so you and I both were on the preview for that, I think.
Yeah,
And yeah, I just think that it's a really clear indication that Verizon uh, is trying to differentiate itself and continuing to look for ways to be different from its competitors while also leaning on its strengths.
yeah,
And I think we all know that one of Verizon's biggest strengths is they have a lot of edge compute, and then they have the opportunity, or they're in the locations where a lot of their business customers are as well. So they're really well positioned to enable edge compute for enterprises and hyperscalers, but also utilizing their fiber network to enhance the experience for whoever needs compute at the edge. And I really got the feeling that this is them doubling down on their edge compute strategy,
hmm,
and working with NVIDIA and Vultr and Google Cloud and Meta,
yeah,
to accelerate their AI deployments. And what's interesting is that NVIDIA is specifically helping with GPU-based edge platforms for Verizon private 5G networks. So that's very much a business focus, and I just think that Verizon's really leaning into what they're capable of on business, and enabling, Google and Meta, who already have a lot of compute in the cloud, to get closer to their customers, and utilizing Verizon's fiber network to get there. Whether they use Verizon's compute or not,
yeah,
I think that's kind of up in the air. But it's really interesting because I think that they've been kind of struggling to find an application for edge compute,
hmm,
and AI is definitely it.
yeah,
And I think this is a conversation I had when I was at MIT last weekend speaking at MIT Reality Hack. I think AI is a Trojan horse for XR technologies because having all this GPU compute at the edge can also be done for rendering. It doesn't
hmm,
only have to be done for AI.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, this is leaning into a strength that Verizon has. But on the surface, when I looked at it, and I think you and I had a quick conversation after our debrief with that team, some of it was sort of ho hum for me. It sort of at times felt like some of the functionality that they were positioning was sort of meet competition relative to others in the space. Time will tell, but everyone has to have an AI story. And one of the things that I talk about in the Forbes article is what AT&T is doing with modern AI to reimagine operations and customer support. You and I have talked about what T-Mobile announced last year with respect to leveraging Gen AI to do that, and it's got me thinking that I'm going to pull together an analysis on sort of a global view of network operators that are leaning into Gen AI to not only provide business-oriented services like Verizon wants to do with their Verizon AI Connect, but also to leverage it internally to, again, improve operational performance and delight customers. So, yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see what happens with
Wanted to add that I think you're right that in some way, like, this very much feels like a follow-on to some other announcements,
yeah,
especially the GPU related stuff. Um, what's interesting is they didn't really talk about AI to run the network as
right.
much as they were talking about AI to be a feature of the network. Um,
Mhm.
so I think that they're starting to lean more into standalone as a component of this, because they talked about an intelligent and programmable network, which is a standalone network.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think you're right. I think they're lagging a little bit, but I think this is a huge improvement for them
yeah,
in terms of just like clear communication, and leaning into what they are good at.
yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Hey, let's go to my second topic, and I want to talk about Ericsson, and we're going to continue the earnings drumbeat here. They reported 4Q earnings, and most notable was their fairly explosive growth in North America. So 50%, 54% market growth. Now, when you look at the aggregate globally, flat, no surprise there. It's been a challenge, especially with RAN, and that deployment has occurred. And now core infrastructure is the emphasis to get to exactly what you were just talking about, deploying 5G standalone. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Ericsson is executing in North America. We've talked about how both Ericsson and Nokia have created federal sales teams to go focus on that area. You and I talked about the possibility of the Trump administration sort of poking the fires again with Open RAN and the need to domesticate the mobility supply chain and that sort of thing. So I think this is it's an interesting development for Ericsson in North America. Now the challenge will be, can they sustain this, right? And have a will grow on a global basis going forward. I'm personally looking forward to Mobile World Congress, where I'll get to spend some time with Ericsson and Nokia and Samsung Networks to learn a little bit more. But what do you think overall about Ericsson earnings?
I think I think it makes sense that this would happen in 2024, especially when you consider how much they, won with AT&T on Open RAN and how that's going to translate to, pretty solid revenues for the next few years.
Hmm.
Uh, I do think that there's a potential opportunity for this to continue forward, and continue to be a success for uh, Ericsson and just like a good region for them, um, especially if Open RAN becomes a big opportunity. Um, I'm not sure how sustainable it'll be. It's very cyclical, but I feel like maybe Q4 is where they ended up booking a lot of business for,
Yeah,
the way it was accounted, right? Like, was this revenue that was already accrued and was just accounted for in Q4, or is this revenue that's actually gonna has already been accrued for Q4, but will actually not be built out till next year? So
right.
that's kind of how I look at it, is like maybe this was just like an accounting thing. Um, and we might actually see it smooth out better next year, or it's just the beginning of a big wave. So,
Well, and
um,
also, their relationship with AT&T as well, right? So,
and that's not
yeah,
going away, right? That's going to be a consistent revenue base for them. So I think if
yeah,
that's a good opportunity for them and it's going to continue to be, then they could be just, gravy from here on out for
yeah,
at least the next couple of years. But it's hard to tell. Um, you know, other countries aren't really picking up Open RAN like the US has.
right.
Japan has kind of tried, but that was just really with Rakuten. Um, and I'm curious to see if maybe this becomes an opportunity for Ericsson, because such a mature market like the US starts to adopt it, and then others start to follow suit.
Yeah. Well, you're going to talk about Vodafone with your next topic, but I'll mention that Vodafone has pretty widely embraced Open RAN, a lot of sort of POCs and that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see what 2025 holds in store with Vodafone in Europe. But that's the segue to your second topic. But you want to talk about low Earth orbit satellite. Vodafone is an investor in AST Space Mobile, and you want to talk about a first with Vodafone and AST Space Mobile.
Yes. So in extremely large, bold font on the Vodafone website, it says that Vodafone makes the world's first space video call from an area of no coverage using a standard mobile phone and commercial satellites built to offer a full mobile broadband experience. That is
Woohoo! That's a mouthful.
it's about this big on my monitor. And that's a 32 inch. So it's about 80% of my monitor is that text. But basically what they did, is they worked with AST Space Mobile, um, with the Blue Walker satellites, uh, and were able to, test the service, on both 4G and 5G smartphones, um, to basically do a video call, which has not been possible before, because most services are, either using specific specialized devices or they're not commercial networks. Um, And the other thing is video is kind of hard to do with satellite. So that's something that was anticipated to happen further on. But doing video now just shows how mature the network is. Pardon me, I'm gonna see. Man,
Bless you.
I think I got a little bit of a cold from Boston. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the rub of it. But
Yeah.
what it is just kind of the next phase of what I would say satellite-based services can offer.
Yeah.
Because most of satellite-based services today are either emergency only or they're just text-based messaging. So
Hmm.
being able to maintain and hold a video call is a big deal. And Vodafone obviously is one of the close partners of AST Space Mobile,
Yeah.
and has been working pretty, I would say, aggressively to enable them. And they said that Vodafone aims for the first commercial direct-to-smartphone broadband satellite service in Europe to start it later in 2025 and 2026. So
Hmm.
they are getting ready to launch fairly soon, basically end of this year. And it'll be great because I think Europe needs somebody like this to kind of take the lead,
Yeah.
and show the way.
I agree. And as AST Space Mobile puts more birds in the air, that performance and that latency and that throughput will only improve over time. And so I'm not surprised to hear that they're planning for a late year sort of commercial, yeah, deployment. So, and we'll see if the US is ahead of that or not. Time will tell. But I mean, this is amazing technology. You and I have been talking about it for years. We were the first to discuss, who we felt was in a pole position. I mean, I'll admit right now, the news cycle is filled with Starlink and what they're doing with direct to device as well. But don't discount what AST Space Mobile is doing. And I know that we have a group of followers, the Space Mob. They continue to ask me on social media, when am I going to have follow up, discussions with the company. That's in process. There's a lot going on. There was another announcement I saw today that I need to get caught up on, but more to come there. But let me hit my third and final topic, and we've really punctuated this one with earnings and AI, and I want to talk about Telefonica. They're doing something with Gen AI. It's not what you might think it is. So, I talk about what AT&T is doing with Gen AI to reimagine its operations and improve customer support and that sort of thing. Telefonica is taking a different slant. So this was a light reading article that posted in DeepSeek has been in the news cycle, and we could probably talk about DeepSeek for forever. But at a high level, what Telefonica is doing is their tech unit is launching its own Gen AI platform, and it's aimed at helping companies and not-for-profit organizations create customizable virtual assistants capable of solving complex problems, automating repetitive tasks, and streaming internal processes. So this is decidedly agentic AI, and again, it's very unconventional. I would have thought that Telefonica would have started with something like intelligent truck rolls and improving customer support, but certainly they're doing something that's a little bit out of their wheelhouse, but it's an interesting fact. And hey, listen, mobile network operators have struggled to monetize their investments just in infrastructure and spectrum. They are also investing significant dollars in modern AI applications, but this is one that I find very interesting. I mean, I don't know if you caught the news or read the article, but what do you think about this whole agentic, AI?
Well, I would say agentic AI is something that's been talked about for quite some time now. It
Mhm.
was very much a trend in the second half of last year.
Yeah.
Um, Ironically enough, it was kind of started by these guys. They were the first ones to really talk about agentic AI in a meaningful way, even though they had a really rough launch. This is basically an agentic device.
Yeah.
Agentic AI has kind of been latched onto by Meta, by NVIDIA, all the smartphone vendors, most of the chip guys. So agentic AI is a trend that was kind of already going into this year.
Mhm.
I think that we'll see more of it. just because the truth is that like something like DeepSeek, you know, it's kind of agentic in nature. It's not actually agentic because it's just a mixture of experts model.
Yeah.
But the truth is
AI
that
AI distillation, right?
yeah, but
That's
the
a
truth
lot of
is
it.
that,
Yeah.
like, agentic AI is just kind of like a higher level version of that, where you pick
Yeah.
the models, that are more appropriate for the use case, and, um, I think we're gonna see more agentic AI this year, and
For sure.
everyone's gonna talk about it if they haven't already.
Yeah, and you're going to hear more about AGI as well, which is, Paul Goodson Smith, our resident expert on quantum and AI, talked about this on a data center podcast that we recorded last week. But AGI to advanced general AI, I don't know. I'm speaking general intelligence, yeah, advanced general intelligence. So, yeah, I mean, I tell you what, modern AI is moving at light speed, and it's you pop the popcorn. It's fun to watch. But let's hit your third and final topic, and you want to hit T-Mobile and Apple earnings.
Yeah, so, um, I'll start with Apple. Apple actually reported, um, better than expected earnings, even though they showed, reduced iPhone shipments, specifically China, falling, as much as 11% in revenue. So,
Mhm.
there's a lot of competition in the Chinese market, and because of that, they are struggling to keep up. And I think a big factor in that is that Apple Intelligence just isn't that compelling.
No,
I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, sorry again.
bless you
I should just hit the mute
again.
button. I have it on my deck. Um, but yeah, I think when you look at like what's going on in the Chinese market, Huawei is resurging,
They are,
and then all the other smartphone vendors, they're doing really well too. So
yeah,
something's got to give, and it's Apple. So a lot of people were really concerned um, with what might happen with Apple, with everybody else doing so well, and they shrunk 11%. So, what kept them afloat was that services grew significantly, and kind of made up for the fact that iPhone was not really, that great in the quarter. Apple also says that, in Apple Intelligence will be much better this quarter and more of the features will be rolled out.
hmm
So it'll be more useful, which might actually help sales, which I think is probably valid to a certain degree, which is why I think that, you know, some of it Wall Street believes that they will have a better quarter as a result of Apple Intelligence being more feature rich.
hmm
But the truth is that unless they really market Apple Intelligence accurately to what the capabilities are, it will continue to be a challenge. Um, and then overall, they still had uh, record or revenue and earnings, so they were able to make up for that gap with iPhone with services.
yeah,
Um, and then on the T-Mobile side, they had extremely good earnings across the board. They said that they added 900,000 monthly subscribers,
hmm
um, mostly for premium 5G plans. Uh, they had their greatest growth year in history, which drove revenue up 6% to almost $17 billion, while revenue increased 7% to 22 billion. So they beat expectations, which were 21.3 billion for revenue. So Q4 was really good to them, and 2024 as a year was good to them. And then all of their partnerships with OpenAI and NVIDIA,
yeah,
um, and they talked about 6G, and they plan to be the company that drives 6G forward with with NVIDIA. Um, and they also had net adds on the broadband side as well. Um, I think they what was the net adds? Yeah, so postpaid net account additions in Q4 were 263,000. That's for the whole company. 1.1 million for the whole year. And then let's see. I'm trying to find the, oh yeah, high-speed net customer addition of 428,000 in Q4 with
Yeah,
1.7 million in 2024. So they added almost 2 million new customers uh,
it's
to their
amazing.
already large customer base for broadband. And yeah, they had a pretty strong outlook. They expect EBITDA to be between 33.1 and $33.6 billion for 2025. And they expect net cash operating activities to be expected between 26 billion and 27 billion. So
Mhm.
they are printing cash. Um, and yeah, like things are just very good overall. They returned $31 billion to shareholders. Um, in 2024. So this was kind of like a really good summary for both Q4 for them, but also for the whole year.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, Q4 they had $3 billion in net income, and in all of 2024 they had $11 billion. So
Yeah.
it was their highest net income in company history. So they just had a great 2024, and I think a lot of that just came from building a really good network, and making sure that customers are happy. And I think they're going to drive that forward in 2025 with all these differentiated services that they introduced last year.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I'm excited. Like I'll tell you, anecdotally, I've been a T-Mobile customer for a very long time, but I just started using the TCL 5G modem that they sent me that runs on RedCap, and it's
Yeah.
a really good experience because you're just getting 30 up, 30 down, no matter where you go.
Mhm. Yeah, it's impressive. I mean, they continue to execute. I mean, and that was a great cover, like, very comprehensive summary, Anshul. The only thing that I would add to that is that, the T-Mobile for Business is also growing its footprint. So Cali Field spent some time during, the earnings call speaking to that as well. And that was my biggest criticism of T-Mobile, is that they were very disruptive in consumer, but they were sort of a one-trick pony, and that they really needed to balance out what they were doing from a business perspective to be competitive with the likes of AT&T and T and Verizon. So I think they've sort of hit terminal velocity there, and they're growing in services beyond access within enterprise and reselling things like SD-WAN and that sort of thing. So, and that's going to be a very profitable business for them longer term. You have a super reliable network that's very, very important to enterprises that are running mission critical applications, that are automating OT environments for manufacturing automation and that sort of thing. So it just rounds out what they're doing, and it's great to see all the strides that they've made over the years. So, but my friend, it was another great episode. Why don't you take us home?
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there would like to reach out for specific insights on a specific 5G topic for another podcast, please reach out to us on social media. Will is at Will Tech, and I'm at Anshel Saad. This was a live recording, and there will be an edited version of this available on YouTube and other platforms shortly.